In Consumer Corner, we take a look at trends creating a buzz here in China. On today's show, we'll discuss the debut of the not-so-cheap iPhone 5C in China. Just a couple decades ago, there were only a few cell phone brands in China's market. At that time, it was probably hard to imagine that China would be the biggest cell phone market someday. After opening up in years of development, China has become the world's biggest smartphone market in the world. Research released that there are more than 300 million smartphone users in China now. Phone companies have been caught in unprofitable price wars in a fight over market share. Apple and Samsung have dominated the market in terms of profitability. It's also assumed that China's Android copycat Xiaomi is doing well, despite not having released its figures. Apple has become a revered company in China. Their products' minimalist style and easy usage are considered representative by some of a modernizing China. Steve Jobs has reached a cult status here, and his products used to leave people fighting for spots in lines before the product release. News of an Apple phone targeting the developing world at a cheaper price got a lot of publicity in China. But people in China would have likely paid attention to any Apple product announcement, even if it didn't specifically target them. Chinese blogs started trending topics related to the new product and the possible lower price. With the release of the iPhone 5S and the iPhone 5C, the Chinese public seemed generally disappointed. The more expensive iPhone 5S looks just like last year's iPhone 5. The difference is that the new phone is faster, has a better video camera, and a new champagne color. The iPhone 5C has the same screen size as the iPhone 5, but with a tougher plastic back. The biggest visual change is the multitude of colors, including red, blue, green, yellow, and white. But this is underwhelming to most iPhone buyers, since many buy iPhone cases to decorate their phones anyways. The iPhone cases are normally made in China, so they are incredibly cheap and accessible. The underwhelming display doesn't end there. Apple released that the price of the iPhone 5S is about 5,288 renminbi, or $860 per unit in China, which was expected. The big debate was over the cost of the cheaper iPhone 5C. Its price was listed at just about $100 less at around $730. This is still considered very expensive compared to other popular smartphones in China, which are less than half that price. Many Chinese consumers anticipated the phone would be cheap relative to other phones in China. Obviously, the actual price was slightly cheaper, instead of actually being cheap. The price of the iPhone 5C discouraged many Chinese consumers to some extent. Analysts even predicted that Apple might have just made a major mistake with the launch of the iPhone 5C. They think that the fairly expensive smartphone will miss out on the market share. By marketing it as cheap, the popularity of the color phones probably won't go over well with buyers. Chinese people like to show off their iPhone purchases because it gives them face. By saying that this is a cheaper phone, the multicolored option might be a turnoff. Some Chinese net users complained about the not very cheap price. One net user wrote, quote, "I cannot believe that the iPhone 5C doesn't add any new functions, but the price is set so high. I love the iPhone so much, but this time it broke my heart." Another net user also expressed dissatisfaction, quote, "I spent a lot of time trying to accept the colorful plastic iPhone because I feared it would ruin the classic white and black series. The cheap price was the only and best explanation for me to accept it. But now the actual prices tell me it might be the right time to give up on the iPhone 5C. Google recently announced that Android users have reached 1 billion. Android has won market share with lower-end options. The average price of the Millet phone is less than $160. Huawei also launched a low-end Android smartphone priced at $79. Research showed that the Millet smartphone sales in China reached 4.4 million in the second quarter of this year, higher than the iPhone's 4.3 million. It indicated that Apple is facing a greater challenge in the smartphone market in China. But it might have made a smart move by cooperating with China Mobile on the iPhone 5C. Some Chinese net users' comments could make Apple more cautious about its next release. One net user satirized, quote, "I guess the iPhone 5C merely serves as a contrast to the expensive price and ugly appearance of the iPhone 5S. The latter is just as expensive at about $130 cheaper. In this way, Apple could get consumers to buy the iPhone 5S. How wonderful a selling strategy." Another net user even scoffed, quote, "I wonder if Steve Jobs had a chance to see the product, if it would drive him crazy to death again. How could those designers think of such a lame look for the iPhone 5C? Data showed that in 2012, the total sales of cell phones worldwide amounted to 1.6 billion, while the sale of smartphones accounted for about 700 million of them. Samsung exceeded Nokia and Apple to become the biggest smartphone sellers in the world. Its sales reached about 396 million smartphones globally. Apple sales were about 135 million units. It doesn't seem like this cheaper iPhone will help it make up that difference.